Hey, Matt, we have a quorum whenever.
Okay, I will just go ahead and call the meeting to order and go ahead and call up the first item on the agenda.
Need a motion? Move.
Uh, Yeah, if I could get a motion to vote on approval of the agenda.
I moved it. I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion approved. And we'll go ahead and get a motion on the approval of the minutes if there are no changes or corrections.
Approval.
So, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion approved. Go ahead and move on to the public participation plan.
Thank you. So in January, we brought you a draft of public participation plan. It did go through a 45-day comment period in mid-February over the last month or so. We have filtered in as many of the comments and gone through them. Just wanted to bring up some of the comments of note. One, someone asked for increased social media presence. One of the reasons we don't do that here at the NPO is none of us are social media savvy, and I think it might be a detriment to us rather than an advantage. And so instead in there, it's looking at partners to work with them all on social media presence about safety or different projects and things like that. Also there was notes about building access for meetings. So we did have some changes to the skywalk door from the Keo ramp over here. And so we did work with our facilities manager to help us unlock that and make sure that it's unlocked during those times. One good question that came up during it, and I'm bringing this to each of the committees, is are all the cities required to send reps to roundtables? Does anyone know this answer? Great. The answer is no. There is no requirement. However, many of your technical transportation committee members or representatives from your committees do participate in the various ones as able and as needed, but it is not a requirement. So want to do that. And they pointed out some link errors as well. Hopefully we corrected all of those. One question that came out of the technical committee this morning is that we do call out someone that does specifically work with any human rights complaints and things like that, or civil rights complaints. And because there are so many of us on the planning staff, we actually had Tracy, our office manager, who was just simply removed from that work by 1 degree, be that person. So we aren't receiving complaints about ourselves, if that makes sense. So that is updated in that document as well. Just to recap, and this was in the January slides as well, we really just clarified the purpose and scope of this participation plan. We did have some shakeups within our roundtables, and obviously even the committee since the last one. The Federal Highway Administration did suggest that we look into having some sort of ADA compliance checklist, and so we included one of those links. The toolbox of mechanisms for our outreach was pretty slim as far as what we listed out there, but we did broaden that to obviously we've been doing a couple more creative things and leave that open. There is now a centralized public comment form that anyone at any time can come onto the NPO website and leave us comments about things. That is up and it comes to multiple of us on staff. And then, of course, we've been trying to keep up to date on any of the federal changes that might impact public participation. Really none so far. DART has a handful, but the NPO seems to be kind of steady as we go on that, but we will keep an eye on that. So there's no need for approval at this committee. However, if you'd like to discuss anything, have any questions, I'd be happy to take those at this time.
Any questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, thank you for your presentation. And now we'll go ahead and move into final funding scenario recommendations.
I can start on this one. As you know, we've been working on this since October. We presented to the policy committee last month a lot of what you're going to see here. What we want to make sure is before we go further and start actually implementing any of this. We want to make sure everyone's just aware of what's in here, what the final recommendation is. That'll obviously be discussed here in a couple of weeks with the policy committee as well. So we'll walk through that here real quick. Just a high summary of where we're at. I know we've shared this with you a few times that there were multiple options across a few different categories of things we're looking at. So here's where we landed, and we'll kind of step through these one by one. First of all, just in terms of schedule, we're talking about starting this in July. So that's why we're trying to button this up now. So that gives us a few months to make sure applications are put together and all the funding guidelines and everything is ready to go by that July date. But by doing that in July, we can have the whole process finished by early fall. That way, when you're doing your budgets, your CIPs, you know what projects your communities are going to be getting funding from the MPO and can make decisions based on that. So moving into the different variables that we spoke about, the first one was on what the score is for safety. Again, we had a lot of range of options, but what we settled on was to have a low minimum score for safety. So what that meant is that we put more project scoring criteria around safety in the application. So we went from not very many scoring points to 44 points now, I believe. We say you have to have a low minimum. We're saying you have to have 11 of the 44 points to qualify. So if you don't get the 11 of 44, you kind of stop, you don't move on. The application will tell you if you're not getting that 11 of 44. So it kind of calls that out to you. But that's what the group settled on as far as recommendation. The second variable is for the Vision Zero program. So again, we have the Safe Streets for All funding that's going to get this started. This Vision Zero program would really be how do we sustain that program after the first couple of years run out of that program. And what the group determined was let's be in that third out of four category where we will fund, the MPO will fund projects that are on the high and critical corridors up to 80%, as opposed to also including the medium corridors or only including high corridors. So we're going to do high and medium or high and critical corridors up to 80%. The next slide will show you what that equates to in a dollar amount, and that means about $2.2 million of $2.2 million is what that is estimated to cost every year.
What is the, like, it requires one FTE?
So what we envision is that as we get this rolling, there is going to be the roadway safety audits happening. Those are going to be studies that have to be managed by someone on staff. There's going to be several of those studies going at once, but there's also going to be coordination on educational campaigns and other, just consulting with the communities on how do you promote safety. So what is envisioned is that that's going to be more than what we have capacity to do today. We will have to increase staff to do that. So we have looked at how do we pay for that. There's a number of different options that we could use. We could just take some of the funding from SDPG itself and put that back out there, because this would be a resource that all communities could have, basically a Vision Zero coordinator for the whole region. We could raise assessments. There's a number of options we could do if and when we need to do that. We won't have to do that yet because it's going to take a while to get to the point where we need to do this, but that's definitely something to be aware of. The third variable ties very much into that second one. Again, we said there's $2.2 million worth of need out there. What this would do, variable 3, is create a new funding target, just like we have for major construction, preservation, and so forth, a 15% safety target. If you recall from the policy meeting, we said that committee had initially we talked about 20, then they dropped it down to 15. So 15 is where we've settled on. To get to that 15%, we would pull some funding from the other categories. So you see there on the far left is what we currently do. So right now we set aside 30% of our money for system capacity. We're saying that would decrease by 10%, so it would be 20% for system capacity. Same thing for reconstruction. We go from 25 to 20. That creates the 15% pot of money. I will also note system capacity is our maximum. If you look at our long range plan, we say up to 30%. What we're changing this to is up to 20% can be for system capacity. The rest are minimums. So if we want to spend more money on bridges or reconstruction or safety, that is possible. up until you get to you have minimums on three, you got to hit the minimums on it, but you can go more than that. So just want to make sure that's clear. So what you see there is you've got 2.2 million of need. We have a funding pot that will be 2.8 million. So you do have a little wiggle room. And to your point, Mayor, this could be where some of the funding for a staff person can come from, or it can be we just have a little bit more to play with. That if in a year we have a bigger need, we have that money there to do something with it. So that's what that is. And then the fourth variable we looked at is how do we administer a funding swap, or do we want to administer a funding swap? And where the group landed is let's explore this further. Let's do a pilot program. That pilot program would include hiring a firm such as PFM to look at this. And again, Columbus, Ohio is another region that's going through this right now. That's what they're doing. We thought that was a good approach. This is another one where once we get up and rolling, we might need another staff person. If we are managing more funding coming in and out of the organization, because now we're administering the funding swap, that's where we might need another financial person. But again, that's going to be a few years down the line, most likely, once we figure out if this is something we even want to do, once we do the pilot program, and so forth.
When you say administration, say the technical committee went through this. So
they did go through this as well. Yep. So we've had the funding review committee, and now we've ran it through tech committee this morning, running it through you, and we'll go through the policy committee next week for the few weeks as well. So just to wrap all that up, so it's all on one page there, you can see what the obligations are. Again, at this point, we just want to make sure everyone is understanding what we're talking about here, that you're supportive of it. If you have questions, now's the time. We're not asking to approve anything this month, but this is going to kind of set us in motion on some other things we're going to do to implement. Some of those things include revising the long-range plan, mobilizing tomorrow to adjust those funding targets, because that's where those targets come from. Changing them, we need to make sure that plan is reflective of that, but also doing the RFP for the pilot program, making sure the scoring system is finalized and the applications are up and running, and all those things kind of hinge on the go ahead to do this. So I'll pause there, see if you have questions.
So, Dylan, what's driving the implementation of this? The Vision Zero plan, is that the reason why
we did this whole thing to begin with? So there's a few things. That's one of them, is if we have this target of Vision Zero, we need to make sure our funding is supportive of that. But we also just did a long-range transportation plan a couple of years ago and didn't make any changes yet to this. We are doing the active transportation plan that's going to wrap up here pretty soon. We just want to make sure that our funding is matching the direction that we've put forth in our goals and our plans and that kind of thing.
And so have you done an analysis of recent past projects and how this would have impacted those decisions?
Yeah, we are doing that. We have done that. And I'll defer to Marcus if you have any information you want to share on that, but that's something that the review committee also asked for.
Yeah, the review committee asked for that. We're currently running past projects through our new scoring system to evaluate how they're doing to meet that threshold for safety and what their safety score would be, so that we can look back and say, here's how all the projects from last year would have scored in this new system.
And I'm assuming you're going to share those results with us?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, is there any kind of a one-size-fits-all approach with respect to safety, at least? I mean, you got to hit minimum scores, and if you don't, regardless of the type of project. So, I mean, is there any concern about that? I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, and that was definitely, if you go back, Gunnar, to the whole the first one, I will point out that in the go to where you see the whole matrix slide. So that low minimum that was set low to make sure that you only have to get 11 of the 44 safety points.
Yeah,
and that's 11 out of what's 130 points or something like that. So you don't have to do a whole lot. And then when we get into that other category, the setting aside the 15%, but there's still 85% of money that's not related to safety in in that whole pot of things. So yes, we are making some changes, but most of the program is going to stay about the way it was. The same projects are going to be eligible, everything else.
I think I would also comment that in general, during past funding conversations, the question has come up about safety and why aren't we putting more emphasis on safety? as a metric. And so this is being responsive to that conversation as well in terms of just trying to be more responsive to the conversations and some of the funding decisions that have already been made and how we're looking at those more broadly.
Yeah, I get that. I guess I just get a little concerned when we're setting a baseline there, and does that exclude something that maybe shouldn't be excluded? I don't know.
Sure. Hey, so if I can jump in. So I think, there are a lot of communities that do go after system capacity dollars. And if you're building a new roadway, it can be hard to say this improves safety. So we sat down with our technical committee staff, who's on the funding review committee, to really look at how would each of these work. And that was one of their questions. I'm building a new roadway. How do I get these 11 points? And then it's set up so that you can do things like, what is the lane width? How do these impact speed? What's your speed limit? Does your community do a traffic incident management training for your police and fire departments? That gives you 5 points right there to get you to that. So it's possible that a new roadway doesn't exist on our map currently could in fact get those 11 points and be eligible for
More proactive safety rather than reactive. Obviously, built right. The road's not there; it doesn't have a crash. It's good.
But you can put mechanisms in place in your application.
I just want to make sure we have what we thought. Sounds like we're.
Any other questions or feedback?
When's the expected report on this next month or the two?
So later this month, we will. I guess Marcus, you're thinking here in a couple of weeks we'll have that for the funding review committee and then policy committee, right?
Yeah, the funding review committee wanted to see previous projects run through the scoring. So that'll be ready before the next policy.
They need it right before policy, so policy will have that same information available.
That'll be interesting.
And there's just other benefits to safety aside. We'll have an online scoring system now where it's just going to make the application process much easier for the community. So there's other things that aren't safety related that are also being improved and corrected and so forth in this whole effort. Okay. Any other questions, comments on this? I know this is a big change. We'll talk about some things later on that we're going to be doing to help make sure your staff is prepared for this when it comes to the application. Understand how this works. So we'll touch on that here and your other items.
Thanks, Dylan. You want to handle the MPO office lease, Dylan?
Yeah, I just have an update on this. Just to recap, we have an opportunity here if we give notice by the end of May to either get out of our lease, but most likely we'll just renew our lease. NAP has been NAP's who our current landlord is. They put forth the best, most competitive, option for us. And so when we talked with you last month and as well as policy, everyone agreed, yeah, we should just continue to explore that and extend our lease here currently. So where we're at right now is we're just finalizing some tenant improvement information. NAP has come through here a couple of times and looked around and all the upgrades and things that we want to do. So that's what they're looking at, is finalizing that aspect of it. I'm hoping that by the April policy meeting, we will have at least for consideration for approval. If we don't get it done in April, we still have until May to do that and hit the deadline that we need to do. That's kind of where we're at right now. No changes. No changes. Just trying to settle on no changes to the rent rate. It's just what's the amount of money they're going to give us to do improvements we needed. And a lot of that's going to be in here. We're trying to make this, the screen can be fuzzy, the sound can be messy. Sometimes we're trying to make this a very high quality space for you to have your meetings.
Any questions or comments for Dylan on the lease? If not, we'll go ahead and move on to legislative update with Gunner and the DC priority list.
I'll kick us off here. Thank you, Matt. We've been tracking a handful of bills at the State House this year. One is the SUDOT bill, which looks like it's headed to the governor's desk. That's going to change the structure of the SUDOT board. I think there was a lot of concern about that early on. It sounds like things may have improved a little bit or be less worse, but the planning bill about the smart planning principles, that looks like it's not been on the debate calendar. I'm not sure if that's going to happen this year. Bike safety bill that made a splash earlier in the year did not clear the first funnel. Then, of course, there are the property tax bills that are still alive and don't know what's going to happen yet. I'll pause here. I know you and your staff are watching these as well. If there's something that the group would like to hear or discuss on it. The check committee was pretty quiet too. It's okay.
I would just comment that on the planning bill, I'd rather see them repealed and eliminated than the amendments that they've made. So I know that's not necessarily like a popular planning concept, but at the same time, the edits were ridiculous. So shocker.
Yeah. Got it there.
Throw things at a wall and see what sticks. What things are less? Our first priority has to be, instead of like planning principles, it's now focused on property tax reduction. They edited all the principles to now be focused on things that the legislature would like, as opposed to actual like city planning. So it's sort of one of those things of why they listen when everybody brings them down. Why did I? Yeah, I don't ask.
The SUDAS bills, I think, again, it's better than it was before. Are you watch?
Yeah, it's better. It takes away that requirement that the cities would have to pay for any additional enhancements. There's still challenges, of course, that are going to be created, but I think that.
And didn't they change the board composition so it's essentially even for the developers and folks that really know what they're doing? Yeah.
But it was the other way, right? They were taking.
They had a one vote edge. Classic box in the hen house.
Yeah.
More discussion on this? If not, we'll move on to federal, and I'm gonna take Dylan in for the federal. Yeah.
Can I just ask there on the Senate property tax bill, they have the road use tax fund, gas tax adjustment to inflation. Is that something the MPO is tracking? Are you engaged on it? Is this just just for your information?
Yeah, we have not been engaged on it at all. I know it's come up, but road use tax fund, I guess we defer to what the communities see out of that. I haven't analyzed, if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Sounds like it might be positive, but we don't directly get that.
That'd be a good thing, Matt.
Cities, so.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on who you are, right, and where you sit, but it does include the ability to index the gas tax to inflation. My understanding, I'm not an expert on that provision. My understanding is that it can go up no more than 1 penny per year. It can go up 1 penny per year for up to 3 years in a row. If it would go up the fourth year, the legislation has a kind of an automatic pause in there where it can't go up more than 3 years in a row. And of course, the legislature, they built in a provision that the legislature could always take action to prevent it from going up. It will certainly result in more dollars flowing into the road use tax fund. And given this is the MPO, I thought it'd be worthy of just flagging.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I would say any mechanism to increase that funding by at least incrementally would be good. Otherwise, you go 20 years between updates.
2%. Yeah. Thank you.
In terms of the federal update we have for you, we mentioned that there's been efforts going on to update the transportation reauthorization bill. Initially said they'd have copies of the bill or proposals for a bill out in March. Now there's, obviously we're here in April. It's starting to soften here a little bit, especially now that we're engaged in Iran and gas prices are going up, and they're saying, well, speaking of road use tax fund, at the federal level, the highway trust fund is how you pay for that. That's based on roadway, fuel consumption. If fuel prices go up, that consumption goes down. So now there's kind of concern of how are we going to pay for this? So some of the organizations we work with are saying, it's still possible, but start to prepare yourselves for a continued resolution until some of this stuff gets a little more buttoned up and we get through midterms and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what we have for you now. Obviously, things change day to day, month to month, but we'll keep watching it. But that's where we're at the moment.
Any questions or comments on federal?
We do have one update on the too.
We're making final preparations for the DC trip, which I know many people go on. This is what I hope to be the last version of the DC list.
June. I'll take
You
it.
can still, we kind of have something going on June 2nd.
Listeners.
Yeah.
So as this group knows, the MPO each year pulls together a list of of our projects seeking federal funding with an active ask out. And what we can do that with that list then is put in front of our congressional delegation and say, here are important transportation projects in the region. Please make phone calls. We're looking to have as many of these funded as possible. So we've tried to keep it really tight this year, and you'll see that it's much shorter than in previous years. I think it's notable that the airport isn't on here anymore, and the transit maintenance facility isn't on here anymore because they've come a long way. So congrats to everybody who worked on that. I'm going to go through these line by line. I just wanted to make sure that you have it in front of you one last time. If there's a corrections that need to be made, or additions or deletions, please feel free to reach out. We're going to work closely with your staff on this. So I'm not too concerned. I feel pretty confident in this list, but put it in front of you one last time. That's it for me.
Thanks, Gunnar. Next, we'll move on to informational items, March financial statements. Dylan?
Yeah, we can walk through these. We typically just put them on there in case you have any questions. We can take them, by exemption.
Any questions?
I will note that we will have a few change orders for water trail. There's one in the agenda packet that you can see. There's another one, maybe two that we're working on that should be wrapped up by the time you get the packet for the policy meeting.
Any other items of business? I think staff have a few. Marcus?
The first one is what we're calling Dollars and Donuts. This will be an opportunity for community member staff to come and learn about our new STBG and TAP funding application tool that'll help evaluate projects. So we invited your technical committee staff this morning. They'll receive updates. If you're interested to learn about the tool, you're welcome to come and have some donuts. And
I'm into the donut.
yeah, donuts. You still come. But yeah, we'll be walking through how to use the new tool and when you have projects and things like that. So that is on June 4th. The other thing we have is the Safe Streets and Roads for All FY26 NOFO has been released. It was released last week. The applications are due May 26th, so it's a pretty quick turnaround compared to previous years. But we feel like we have a pretty good opportunity to advance the implementation projects that was before us last year. We've already reached out to all the communities that participated in our previous grant and got the okay moving forward from them. Up there you can see the likely funding amounts that are available for each. The only big change was that USDOT noted that if they don't receive enough projects for the planning and demonstration grant that we have, they'll move that money to try to cut down the whole amount for this year. So no big news here. If you have questions on it, happy to take those. Yeah, we're trying to get that other piece that we didn't get funded last year through. That I'm done.
Marcus, congratulations on your 40 under 40 that we're going to celebrate today. So nice honor. Our next
That happened a long time ago.
Our next meeting is scheduled for 11:30 on May 7th. And if there's no other business to come before us, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
You.
Thanks.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.